This is an SM Media production.
Hi, folks, and welcome back to the newest episode of the SM Media Scottish Football Show. I'm Scott McPike. It's a pleasure, as always, to be your host. It's been a long time since we've been back on this show, but we're going to use this international break to take a wee look at the league season so far. But where else to start other than talking about Scotland's Euro 2024 campaign? To join me on this show, it's a pleasure to welcome the following three guests. It's a pleasure to welcome back, first of all, to the show, Mitchell Feggans.
Yeah, nice to be back, Scott. Thanks for having me on. Been a long time coming, but yeah, first appearance of the season starts now.
Always a pleasure, mate. It's good to have you on. And two newcomers to the show. First of all, it's a pleasure to welcome on Samuel Porritt.
Thanks for having me on. Delighted to make my debut.
Absolute pleasure. And joining the show as well for the first time, Daniel MacLeod.
Likewise with Samuel, thanks for having me on. It's a great double signing. Hopefully one that will see great results in today's show.
Absolutely. It's obviously two fans of clubs with two new managers in the season so far. So we'll get your thoughts on them later on. But we have to start, obviously, we're recording this during the international break. Scotland have qualified from a group for the first time since 1997. It's certainly it's the first one. I know it's the first one since I was born in 1996. I know it'll be the same for you. Mitchell, we obviously saw this 3 years ago, Scotland qualifying for a tournament. It was a completely different set of circumstances. We were obviously in the middle of a lockdown. We couldn't celebrate. It was in Serbia for a start. It was a playoff. The group stage of this performance in this group stage, I can't think, and I think we'll all be agreement here, I can't think of a competition and a Scotland side that were done so well to get through a tournament, and it's full steam ahead for Germany.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there in terms of just how well we've done. Obviously, been lucky enough to be going to Scotland games since about 5-6 year old, most campaigns. So going into this campaign, it was kind of no different to the others. Obviously, we finished pretty well. The Qatar, obviously, missing out against Ukraine, that was a tough one. But I don't think anyone could have expected the way that we kicked on in this campaign. 5 wins from 5. That was just absolutely ridiculous. Like, you would not expect that from Scotland, let alone, I don't know, a team like England or Spain. Like, it's funny because I remember going to the Spain game earlier on in the campaign and being quietly confident. And I don't think I've actually ever been as confident in a Scotland team winning a match as I have been in the games that we've played this campaign. Even the game against Georgia at home, normally that could be seen as a little bit of a wobble, a potential banana skin type thing. But I was very confident going into those games, and I think, like you say, to qualify through the group this time is a big thing as well, and to do it in front of the home fans as well with 2 games to spare must have been nice for the players. I think ultimately it probably did have an effect in the final 2 results there. Obviously, getting the 2 draws, I think there was a clear drop in intensity, especially against Norway on Sunday. I think we noticed, or certainly from where I was sitting, there was a clear drop in intensity. It wasn't quite the same. It was a little bit of a strange atmosphere. We weren't too elated when we scored. We weren't too disappointed to concede. So I think just important that we secured the qualification and didn't get beaten in the end, and a good night for all the fans at Hampden on Sunday night.
Yeah, absolutely was. Samuel, I can't think of a Scotland team that have been so consistent in this group stage. I'm from the generations of Scotland fans who remembers Kazakhstan, remembers Georgia, remembers all the Faroe Islands. I remember all those horrendous nights following Scotland. But I want to go to a period, the 17th and 20th of June will always stick out for me. Those were the 2 games that I think showed the progression of the Scotland side. That memorable day in Norway where 2 late goals for Dykes and McLean secured a massive victory. But we remember that horrendous night at Hampden against Georgia where the heavens opened. But Scotland were just so comfortable that night. It was a messy game, but they got the job done. That was the time where I thought, even Scotland can't throw this away. And I've never thought that. Do you know what I mean? I've supported Scotland since I was born. 27 years, I've never seen Scotland as comfortable as they were in that week.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was the confidence the team showed. I mean, the Georgia game, that would have been easily to lose, especially if the game was delayed, half an hour, within an hour. It was absolute chaos, but the team came out and it did the job. And that's what we've done the whole campaign, really. We've been so consistent. I think Steve Clark has to get a lot of credit for it. He's made it almost a club team, who's going to come in, who's in, the players know each other. It's a really consistent team. And it's that belief that I don't think I've ever had that as a Scotland fan. You go into every game, even I think there was 3 games left, and mathematically we could have finished third. You're still thinking, we'll do it. We'll do it. Whereas in the past, you wouldn't have had that level of belief and confidence. And I think the Norway game you mentioned, that's when it really sunk in. We're actually going to do it. I think that's when it really hit home. Scotland are back to being a tournament qualifying team.
And it's that thing as well, as Daniel, with like Scott McTominay, 7 goals. I mean, to have a talisman like that, but there's also so many players in this team that deserve a bunch of credit, like McGinn, McGregor, the whole side. But I think the manager, and I have criticised Steve Clark a lot in the past couple of years, and I think he does deserve a lot of credit for what he's done with this side, because it is a side full of, I'm not going to say there's not world beaters in there, but they're all, you can see the togetherness in the side, and I think it gives a lot of credit to the manager and the players for how well they've connected, and they do deserve this opportunity. And I think it's going to be a huge, between now and June, it's going to be who's going to be in the squad. But I think the players that have been there and been a part of this journey deserve a load of credit, and the manager does as well.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Clark, when he took the job in 2019, the state of the Scotland national team was it's night and day compared to now. You were getting crowds of 17, 18,000 to watch games. And then obviously it wasn't the clearest path to Euro 2020. It wasn't like this run. We relied on penalties both times in the playoffs after failing to get out of qualifying group. And the squad itself, the likes of McGinn, McTominay, even Tierney and Robertson, they probably hadn't quite found their niche at that point. In this qualifying campaign, I think every single player in the starting 11's come on leaps and bounds. I think the football we've been playing, it's very rare you could say this about a Scotland team, but I genuinely think we've been playing great football. The Spain game was the peak. The level of performance, if you look at the goals, if you look at how we defended, we completely controlled the game against a top side. And that gives you genuine belief going into a tournament. And I think the players and Clark, because they've all committed to it, they've bought in. And then Clark, for the whole time, despite criticisms to some players, I think at the start of this qualifying campaign, many fans would have probably had their doubts about McTominay. You definitely would have had your doubts about McTominay becoming the talisman of the team and some sort of attacking midfield player that could go and get us goals like a Lampard or a Gerrard, even though they'd never even put up those numbers themselves at international level. So, yeah, full credit to them all. And if they hadn't inspired the country before, they certainly have now.
Yeah, and it is going to be, like, from now until June, we are going to be totally on the Scotland train, and it's going to be really exciting. It's a different feel. It's going to be one that I'm sure the Tartan Army will be already booking their tickets in Germany. So obviously it's going to be a bit of a really good journey between now and June. League action. Let's touch on the 4 SPFL leagues from obviously the start of the season till now. Looking at the Premiership, we've got a St Johnstone fan and a Hibs fan on the show. We'll get their thoughts and their positions so far and the kind of change there. But we'll start at the top. Mitchell, Celtic lead, obviously 8 points over Rangers. Rangers have got a game in hand. Celtic have had a really tough start. They've went to Ibrox, they've went to Tynecastle, they've went to Pittodrie and won. Rangers, we know what's happened there. There's been a resurgence in the past few weeks with Philippe Clement. But it does look, full credit's got to go to Celtic for their start so far.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first couple of games and Rodgers' return, certainly in the league, obviously wasn't quite plain sailing. You look at that first game, I think, was it 4-2 against Ross County at home?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the first game. You wouldn't see that happening last season under Ange Postecoglou. It was must be such a change for the players, having been used to his, style of play for the 2 seasons, and then with him going and Rodgers coming back, it's obviously you fancy different players, different style. Perhaps I don't think they're quite as intense as what they were in terms of their press. Certainly watching on from like just a totally neutral perspective. I think Palmer, Luis Palmer looks like a really good signing. I'm liking the look at him. I think O'Reilly as well really came into his own under Brendan Rodgers. And I think ultimately they have been getting better, certainly domestically. I think they're starting to get more convincing with their performances, scoring more goals, keeping more clean sheets. And I think obviously European form hasn't really helped. I mean, they looked really good against Atletico Madrid, probably disappointed not to actually get 3 points from that, and probably felt it was a huge missed opportunity given the fact that Atletico were down to 10 men at one point. So it's shown that they are competitive, especially at home in Europe, certainly, and obviously domestically they're always going to be the favourites. But I think going back to the point, I don't think they will. I don't think they're the side that they were last season, in my opinion. I think there's still an opportunity, and I think the title race is still on in a way. And obviously, I've got absolutely no preference as to who goes around and wins the Premiership title. But I definitely would like to see a much closer race this season. I think there's still a chance for that to happen.
Samuel, obviously Rangers, it's been a bit of a mess early stages. Michael Beale was, in my opinion, found out relatively soon that he wasn't cut out to be the Rangers manager. The wet and sourced Philippe Clement, he's came in 7 games, he's won 6, drew 1. He's just brought a change into a cup final as well. It's a big opportunity to make his kind of claim early and get a trophy on the board. And Mitchell's right, although it is 8 points and there's a massive run of games coming up for both sides, and Rangers will be thinking like if they can get a really positive run out of those games and go to Parkhead and win at the end of December, it makes it a real competitive contest. But it's looking more as if Rangers are, and it is early days, but Rangers aren't going away yet.
No, completely agree. I think the second half of the season is also when championship winning teams really come alive. You talk about Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson, used to always have a bit of a slow start and then really pick up. Man City last season in the Premier League, teams tend to pick up later on in the season. So if they can keep in touching distance, win the next Old Firm, Rangers would only be, I think, 5 points behind, or pretty close. And all of a sudden it just takes one slip up from Celtic and they're right on their tails again. So personally, just looking in, don't support either of the teams, obviously. I think Celtic don't look as unbeatable as they did last season. So I think it'll be a good title race. And if Rangers win the next Old Firm, then they're certainly right on their heels.
Daniel, 2 sides I want to touch on that I think have had quite impressive starts are St Mirren and Dundee. St Mirren, obviously, they managed to get top 6 last season. Dundee have came from nowhere and kind of put themselves in that top 6 hunt. They're 2 sides that if they can keep their runs going, top 6 is not out of the question for them.
Not even just top 6. I think there's probably a question of even Europe not being out of the reach. I think maybe for Dundee it might be a bit further, but St Mirren last season, I thought they were brilliant. They'd brought in good players. Stephen Robinson turned things around really well. I think the likes of Alex Gogic, Mark O'Hara, even Curtis Main when he was there last season, I thought they were very close to getting into that. And I thought this season they were going to struggle a bit, having lost a couple of players. They lost Trevor Carson, they lost Joe Shaughnessy, they lost Curtis Main. And then this year they look at an even better side. They've recruited well. And I think the players who are there, they just seem to keep going from strength to strength. So I think, yeah, top 6 definitely in the question if they keep things up. Dundee, I think they're a team who I thought, probably on the face of it, I thought they were going to be in a real relegation fight. Obviously, it's still quite early days and you never know what might happen. But they changed manager and then they signed about 12 players in the summer. You're thinking, this is quite unstable. Dundee, historically, in my life anyway, they're a team that you just expect to get relegated, which is probably going to get me a bit of stick from Dundee supporters, but I think it's true. They've signed some great players this season. They've signed players who are proven in the league, and they've brought in other players who have come out of nowhere and they've done brilliantly, the likes of Amadou Bakayoko, and then they've built on good players like Lyle Cameron and Luke McCowan who've already been there. I think they've got a good balance in the team, and top 6, I don't really see why not at this stage.
Mitchell, let's look at some of the other sides before we get the thoughts of St Johnstone and Hibs. Hearts are sitting in 4th and 17 points. They've kind of been up and down. I think Kilmarnock have been fairly solid. Obviously, get that big win in the first day against Rangers, which I imagine will have put a smile on your face. Aberdeen, 12 points. They've had a bit of a tough start. They've obviously been trying to juggle Europe as well. What's been kind of your thoughts on the likes of Hearts, Kilmarnock, Aberdeen, and even the likes of Motherwell as well?
Yeah, sure. In terms of Hearts, obviously you mentioned they've been kind of stuttering up and down, haven't they? They've not really got going one way or another. Naismith was under a real bit of pressure there just before the international break, and obviously that win against Motherwell at Fir Park, I think the performance they showed there was pretty convincing. And although they only won by 1 goal, I've heard from people who were at the game and just seen stuff online that Hearts are pretty good in that game. So that's probably kept them in the job a couple more weeks yet. I think the international break came at a good time as well. A chance for them to kind of reassess, regroup, and try and go again. Kilmarnock, obviously, again, I think that you mentioned, obviously, to my delight, they've been fantastic at home. I think I've got here, I think they're second in home form behind Celtic. We should look at the home form table. I think McInnes seems to have found a really good balance in the squad. Recruitment again has been first class. Obviously, I've got down here Robbie Dees. I thought that was a really astute signing from Inverness. You know, he was a real man mountain, if you like. Sorry to use a tin pot cliche there, but he really was. He was first class for them, and he probably was too good for the championship. I think I was surprised that no one actually came in beforehand for him. And obviously Kelly managed to get in on a free transfer from Inverness after his contract went out, which I think's brilliant. I think Brian Stewart Finlay backs a masterstroke as well. Knows the league inside out. Obviously, he's had international experience. Two, I think also they've kind of got rid of the Tommy Wright signings, if you like. I think I know a few boys are Kelly fans, and that's the main thing that they're saying. They've got rid of the deadwood that aren't going to cut it. And I think McInnes is still going to look to add more. And I think he's also really good at developing the youth. Obviously, David Watson, who's from around the Ayr, Prestwick area, he's been fantastic since he's broke through last season. He's just taken the chance at the back really, really well. I think he's getting international recognition now with the under-19s, Scotland that is. So yeah, I think the mix of experience and youth there is key. Good recruitment too. Motherwell spoke about it at the start. Kettlewell was under huge pressure at the moment. There's lots of Motherwell fans calling for his head. I think the start, obviously, when he came in last season, he was very good. Results were certainly an upturn of form anyway. Although, like you said, Scott, before we started recording, it's near on impossible to try and replace the goals that Van Veen scored for them last season. I think Samuel mentioned as well, signing Theo Bair, who's not exactly a proven goal scorer, to replace him was an interesting one. Although he has started the season okay, in fairness to him, but yeah, I think in terms of Motherwell, not replacing Van Veen's been their downfall. Aberdeen, European hangover, could you say? They seem to, I don't know what's up with them. Like, because Robson looked as if he had the right balance last season. Good group of young players, but also they had a bit of experience as well.
They looked
obviously
horrendous against Celtic last week. Like, they looked.
Honestly, I was literally about to say that. Honestly, like, one of my pals is actually from Uni's an Aberdeen fan. I was talking to him about it today. He said I was going to be coming on here speaking about the SPL, and he said that they just feel that they sat off them way too much.
Mm-hmm.
From moment one, they could see what was going to happen. They were going to sit off and try and defend the whole game, and you can't sit off Celtic for the whole game, especially at Parkhead and that massive pitch. They're just going to exploit you with the players that they've got, and the quality is going to shine through in the end. And I think Aberdeen, they've got time to turn it around, but I certainly think it's worrying times for a Dons fan, especially considering the progress they made last season. It almost feels like a step backwards, if you like.
Daniel, let's get into Hibs. Obviously, they were I think they were the first side to make a managerial change. I remember doing the prediction show we did at the start of the season, and we were going to talk about the sack race, and I think we were unanimous in it was going to be Lee Johnson. And I don't think it was anything to do with results. I just always got the feeling with Lee Johnson is that he was never really well supported with the Hibs fans. Like, I think it was one of those things where, and we've seen this in different clubs. I think Beale's a similar one at Rangers. Fans were optimistic, but they were also thinking he's never really going to work out. And it's a tough one because Johnson's obviously went out. Montgomery's come in from Australia. I think watching them, I've watched them a couple of times in the past few weeks, and I can see it in terms of an idea. but it's getting it into fruition, and I think it is going to be a tough run. But I do think Montgomery looks a good appointment.
I would agree. Yeah, I think Montgomery's come in following Johnson, and you're completely right. I don't think Johnson ever really had the full support from the fans. I think he came in at a tough time. Maloney had just been hired and fired very quickly after Jack Ross was sacked. I think there was probably a distrust in what was actually going on at the club. Recruitment was very hit or miss. Brought in some amount of players, and a few have worked out, a few hadn't. Took some really bad results, and yeah, I think anyone who was going to put money on the first managers get sacked, they probably did bet on Lee Johnson. To be fair, I think the club probably suffered by giving him a full transfer window. You never want to see a club sacking their manager on, I don't know, it's maybe the 28th of August or something, because you've just given someone who's not going to be managing you for the entire season free reign on transfers. And now Nick Montgomery's having to work with a group of players that aren't his, and he's not going to get a proper budget in January. But back to the point on Montgomery, I think he's a more serious character. I think Johnson was kind of flip-flopping between formations. He was very David Brent in press conferences. That's what people say. Montgomery, to a fault, is very serious. He's a hard character.
I've never thought of Lee Johnson and David Brent, but now I see it. I can't unsee it.
It became apparent too early on for my liking, which is actually good entertainment, and it does sometimes make you root for him, but then at other times you're like, this guy is just absolutely waffling. He was talking about sharks fearing Monday. I don't think you'll get that from Montgomery. He's brought in, he ironically said in his first press conference that he didn't have a philosophy, which I think is completely untrue.
Yeah,
he played 4-4-2 in every match. It's been very clear that he wants to keep the ball. He wants to use the wide players. I think there's been promising signs, but there's still a lot of the weaknesses that were still there under Johnson. I think he needs time. He needs backing. The only question is if Hibs are actually going to give that to him.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing as well. Look, when you've got Montgomery coming in, he's coming in from across. He's obviously been someone that's been kind of well thought of. Just speaking to people around about the Scottish game for a while, people have been keeping an eye on him in this country about what he's been doing overseas. So I'm not surprised that he got an opportunity like this. I think Hibs fans, a few Hibs fans I've spoken to, like yourself, are quite excited about him. And you see what he's trying to do. Like I like the signing of Dylan Venti. I've been a big fan of Eli Yuan for a while. There's a lot of players in that Hibs team that can make a real difference. I think Hibs will hit a run going. I think they could do really well. Samuel, on to St Johnstone at a different end of the table. I never got the feeling with Stephen McLean that he was good enough to be that type of manager. Now, he obviously didn't really help himself, in my opinion, with some of the comments he made. We'll talk about it off air, kind of post-match press conferences. But I don't think anybody, and I'll be honest here, when I heard Craig Levein was linked with it, I was astonished that was the route they were going down. But you're a St Johnstone fan. You obviously will see St Johnstone a lot more than we will. What's your take on it? What do you think? What do you think of the appointment, and do you think it was the right thing for McLean to go?
When it comes to Stephen McLean, one of my favourite ever St Johnstone players. Loved him growing up. A personal hero. I think he came in, he did a brilliant job after Callum was sacked in, I think it was April. He came in 6 games. I think he won 3, drew 2, lost 1. I think off of that, he could have gone, but he earned a crack at the management job. But at the end of the day, I think the job was just too big for him. He had to cut the budget quite a lot. You saw he let about 17 or 18 senior players go, only brought in about 6 by the time we'd started pre-season, combined with an injury crisis like one I've never seen in my life before. We had first game of the season in the League Cup, we had like some daft like 12 senior pros, and 4 of those were under 20. So you were playing with people on the bench younger than us. So it was a bit ridiculous, to be honest, start of the season. I think he got really unlucky with that. And then start of the season, you play Celtic away, Aberdeen away. You got some really tough fixtures, but at the end of the day, I think they just had to relieve him of his duties before he was cut adrift. Again, a lot of respect for Stephen McLean, but I think the job was too big for him. When it comes to Craig Levein, I will be honest, it was a name that did surprise me a bit when he was mentioned, as I saw him at the game, watching as a fan. I think it was the Kilmarnock game. He was in there, and that's when he was first linked to the role. And to be fair, he grew on me a lot because I think we need an experienced manager and we need a break from the current regime. And I think bringing in Andy Kirk is what sold it for me because I really like what he can say. And I think his coaching, and he can take care of more of a tactical side of it, whereas Craig Lean can help revolutionise the club. And I mean, it needs modernised, the recruitment system. There is no recruitment system. So if he also gets on well with the owners. So if he can come in, revolutionise the backroom staff, let Andy Kirk take some of the coaching responsibility, he can do man management, help pick the team. I'm actually quite excited about the future. I think the first few games have been really positive, and the international breaks come at a really good time because it means they can regroup, get some players back from injury. We've still got a couple out. Nicky Clark's now injured until January. Dre Wright's out until beyond then. So he's been really unlucky, but getting some players back into the side, he can assess the options he's got. I think, I mean, we're in 10th right now. I would be quite confident that we'll finish. We won't finish dead last anyway, is what I would put my money on right now. I'm quite happy with the appointment.
Speaking of the kind of bottom sides, Mitchell, we obviously done another managerial change. Derek Adams is back for his third spell at Ross County, taking over from Malcolm Mackay. I think that I was surprised when it happened, but when you look at the run of results, I don't think it is a surprise when you look back. Derek Adams coming back, he's obviously got the history of the club, but one thing that's really caught my eye in the past couple of days looking into it is Morecambe fans are absolutely gutted that he's going. And that was the same with Stephen Robinson, and we know how well Stephen Robinson's done at St Mirren. It's a hard job to take a club like Morecambe up to League One and keep them solid in League Two, as he's done in the past couple of years. He obviously did a difficult spell at Bradford, but Derek Adams might just be the person to get Ross County out of the hole they're in.
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at everything. I think we were talking before about how, you know, historically people returning for second, third spells, it doesn't really always quite work out as well as people would have liked. It could always end badly and damage reputations, so to speak. But then again, you mentioned his reputation down at Morecambe, and I noticed the same thing as you. You know, the amount of fans that were, replying to the announcement of that Morecambe made. He said he was going to pursue an opportunity back up in Scotland, and the amount of fans there that were almost just like you say, totally gutted that he was leaving and almost angry that he was actually leaving a job in League Two and going to the Scottish Premiership, because I don't think they didn't view that as a step up, whereas in my opinion it probably is. Like, there's a chance that they compete for European football in the Scottish Premiership. Okay, Ross County probably aren't going to be there this season, let's be honest, but the chance is still there. And you get to go to Parkhead, Ibrox. You know, it's a bit different to playing, I don't know, like a Cheltenham Town away, for example. You know, it is probably a step up in my opinion. But as for Derek Adams himself, I think time will tell that point. And I think in terms of Malcolm Mackay going, I remember saying to my dad the other day actually that I was pretty surprised by that. But then again, when you look at it on paper, it probably was, with regards to the results, the right decision, wasn't it? But again, you think of how well Malcolm Mackay did, especially that season where they had, I think, Charles Cook, they had Joseph Hungbo, and I think they were top six and just missed out in the European race. So you look at that, a few good players in, good recruitment system, and you're laughing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Derek Adams gets on. But then again, two sides to every story. So yep, should be interesting.
It will be. Let's look into the Championship. Obviously, we were thinking that Dundee United would be probably the team to beat in that league, and they've started the season quite well. They're sitting a point clear of Raith Rovers. Raith Rovers are a fairly solid start. We'll start with Samuel when that's Dundee United. Obviously, their one target is to get back up. They've been strong so far, 31 points. They're plus 27 in goal difference. Raith Rovers, though, have got a game in hand. They're 4 points behind. Raith Rovers they're not going away.
I think Raith Rovers are going to chase them down for the season. I think they will give them good competition. They've invested a decent amount of money in the summer. They've brought some really good experienced players in. I think they've got a good blend in the squad. That's probably the best thing. We've got some good young players and some good older players. I think they'll give Dundee United a good race, but at the end of the day, I don't see Pats United winning the title. I think they've got, again, a good blend between some really high-end Championship players, some lower-tier Premiership players, and Jim Goodwin's been there since, I think it was March or January, some kind of time earlier in this year. So he's been there a wee while. He's got his feet under the table. So I would back them to win the title in the end.
Daniel, do you see it going the same way? What about the likes of kind of Partick Thistle are sitting in a decent position there on 22 points? You've got links at Airdrie and Fairland. Inverness obviously brought in Duncan Ferguson, which I don't think anybody on the planet would have envisioned a couple of months ago, but they've done it. Queen's Park been quite disappointing, but it is quite an open league, but Dundee United do look obviously like they're in a good position to go back up.
Yeah, I think Dundee United, I think they do kind of come into the league. They failed so badly last season. They were top heavy, but they were just a complete shambles from top to bottom. But I think Jim Goodwin's taken that job, and he's revitalized himself, but he's revitalized that club as well, because they've got a really good blend in the team. Like Sam touched on with Wraith Rovers, I think he's brought in good signings. He's brought in Ross Docherty and Kevin Holt, who'd experienced championship players. Well, last season at Motherwell, but he is a complete hitman in that league. And they've got these good young players coming through, like Chris Mockery and Kai Fotheringham, who've just been flying. So for me, they are the strongest team in the league, and they probably should be, given the size of the club. But I can see Wraith Rovers pushing them. They've got great character. They've got a good manager, and they do have a lot of quality in their side. But I think they're going to fall into that tough category that Arbroath and Queen's Park have found in recent seasons of probably being the people's champion, but they're probably just going to miss out for me. Further down the league, it's so tough because there's so much quality in the championship. It's such an exciting league. It's so competitive. It's impossible to predict at the start of the season. It really is one of the leagues in the world you've got to watch. You've got to make the most of these games. But it's so hard. It's hard to tell if Inverness are going to keep up this form they've got with Duncan Ferguson. For me, I think they need a bit more squad depth. Dunfermline look quite solid. Airdrieonians are such an exciting prospect, the way they play football. It's just, for a team in the lower leagues of Scotland to be playing this way and approaching games that way, it can only be good for the league, for the whole profile of it. I think there's such an image of what a lower league Scottish team looks like, and Airdrieonians, probably even Queen's Park, are completely turning that on its head. Successfully sometimes, maybe not. Maybe Queen's Park struggled a bit more with it this year, but the rest of the championship I'm finding just really difficult to predict, but great to watch.
Mitchell, let's get into talking about your beloved United. It's been a bit of a rocky season so far. I remember watching the Partick Thistle game on the Friday night and thinking to myself, the goodwill that Bullen's got at that time, I think, was out the window. But the Friday after, go to Queen's Park, and I thought they were phenomenal that night. And from there, there's been a bit of a resurgence that they're sitting in I would say, a decent position considering where the start was. They've had some difficult results. What's the overall kind of feeling so far? 13 games, 6 in the league. I think at the start of the season, I think that's probably a decent position for it to be in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think last season changed a lot of people's expectations. 100%. I think at the beginning of last season, the aim really was, establish yourselves as a championship club again, stay away from the relegation fight, just finish around that mid-table. I think anyone would have taken, even at 8th, 7th, 6th last season, then to go on and finish second when we're realistically literally a kick away from being 5th. I think if Mark McKenzie doesn't score that goal in the 90th minute up at Inverness, then we're 5th and we're out of the playoffs, and then suddenly we score that goal and we're 2nd in the league. So I think, like Daniel mentioned, the championships is so bonkers, frankly, that actually a goal pushed us up 3 positions nearly. But anyway, that's going back to the point. Expectations have been raised amongst all supporters, I think, in terms of, second last season. This season we're going to go on again and we're going to be playoff challenges and we're going to be really pushing for promotion again. Realistically, that's probably not going to happen this season. I think this season is important in terms of establishing a group for the future. We've got a couple of really exciting young players. Obviously, there's a few boys up from down south. That seems to be the market that we seem to kind of ponder in. And
it's worked in the past. It's worked in the past.
Obviously, Tommy Adeloy and the season prior to last, Dipple last season, who we sold for a big fee in the summer. And I think that was a record sale, possibly, or maybe joint record sale with Gary Teal, which was about 20 years ago. So that just shows you how we've really struggled to find someone of that same caliber since. But yeah, no, I'm actually quite happy with where we are. I think obviously there was a lot of talk around the manager at the start of the season, whereas I've always backed him. I think he speaks really well.
Yeah.
Knows everyone in the club inside out. Everyone's all in it together. It's a real sense of unity about the place. I think in terms of on the pitch, we had a really, really tough run of injuries after the League Cup group. We lost Andy Murdoch to an ACL injury. We lost Ben Dempsey to a meniscus tear. He's luckily back in training now and looks to be fit and available for Peterhead in the Scottish Cup at the weekend. But we had some horrid injuries, and when you lose players like Akinyemi, Josh Mullen, Alex Kirk, even the boy we had up on loan from Arsenal was fantastic. You've lost some real key players there. I mean, you take your midfield away virtually with about a week to go of the transfer window. We were forced into really investing in that area whereas prior to that we were maybe looking to add one but apart from that we were pretty solid in that area. That was probably one of our nailed on positions for the start of the season. We didn't really have to go in and look for any additions or replacements, and that just totally flipped given the injury list. And I think the signing of Roy Sile has been brilliant. I think he's almost like a young Andy Murdoch, if you like. He's came up from England, came from Brentford B. We've signed him for two seasons. We've got him in at the club. He's not on loan. I think he's going to be a real good signing. I also think the signing of Anton Dowd as well, I think that raised many people's eyebrows in the Championship as to why we're signing someone in the same league on loan from another club like Partick. I think Partick fans were questioning as well why they let him go, especially after they saw his form for us. I think he's scored something like 5 or 6 goals in about 7 or 8 games. And you mentioned that night at Hampden, obviously being in Queen's Park there, we beat Airdrie away from home pretty comfortably. That was a great performance that day. Beat Dunfermline away from home. And when you've got the likes of Logan Chalmers on the wing and Anton Dowsey to finish, the attack's looking really good. I think it's just a case of getting the continuity back into the team. And I think with Ben Dempsey coming back and into the squad the weekend, that'll really start to mould the team together. And we're only going to get better from here. Listen, there's so many boys that have come up, like I said, from down south, and it's not going to be plain sailing for them straight away. It's a hard league to get used to, and I think we've seen that. But I definitely think the trajectory is definitely going upwards, and I think I'll definitely take a mid-table finish this season and build for next year.
Yeah, 100%. I'd agree with that. I think it's a fairly solid position for here to be in so far. Moving into League One, we'll start with Daniel with this. I don't mean to, we're in kind of mid-November and it's probably too early to say this, but Falkirk and Hamilton, it looks to be a 2-horse race at the top of that table.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think Falkirk to still be unbeaten after 13 games, they look to have finally gotten their act together and finally look to decided to leave League One. But, it is still very early days, as you say. Cove Rangers have been on a really good run of form recently. But I think if you look at the quality in the Hamilton and the Falkirk sides, you would have to bet on them too. They've both been playing good football from what I've seen so far. They've both been scoring goals. I think Callum Morrison and Ross McKeever from Falkirk have been on flying form, and they're probably 2 players that they're going to rely on for the whole season. I did see there was a bit of interest in Morrison recently, so if he was to go, that would be a big boost for the other teams in the league. I feel Hamilton flying, 2 boys who were actually given some decent opportunities at Hearts a few years ago when they were coming through. But yeah, I would bet on those 2 teams. They both look like they're more than good enough to go up and compete in the Championship at this point anyway.
Let's get into the kind of big talking point for the weekend in League One, which was the post-match reaction interview of Marvin Bartley. Start with Samuel on this. I think there's a lot of Queen of the South players that have probably been pretending they're Marvin Bartley and Football Manager.
Well, to be honest with you, when a manager starts saying things like that post-match, it begins to spell the beginning of the end for me. I think
I agree.
It's going to be really hard for him to come back from saying something like that in public. You're almost like reaching at straws, because at the end of the day, all the players in the league will be at it as well. So it's a bit of a loose statement. I think they're in trouble as well. They're only 3 points off 9th in the league last time I checked.
1-1 in 10 games.
You don't come out of that. It's grim form, and for a team like Queen of the South, who only relegated 2 seasons ago, so you'd imagine they'd want to be pushing playoffs. I think last season they finished playoffs as well, or just outside. It's a really grim start to the season, and I don't see a way back for him, to be honest. I think once you've lost a dressing room like that, you're going to have to do a lot to win it back over.
You certainly are. I think the problem that Marvin Bartley's got, and I think it's a problem a lot of managers that kind of come from the kind of full-time operation, and I know Queen of the South, I think, are still full-time, but it is a different way to what Marvin Bartley's been operating. It is a different feeling. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm not excusing 8-hour gaming sessions. I don't think that I wouldn't even get away with that in my life. So I don't think football players should be getting away with it either. But it's a different walk of life, and it's you either adapt or you don't last. And it's I think it is. I can agree with Samuel. I think it is. It's going to be a long way back. But that league is fairly, apart from the top two, Mitchell, it's fairly competitive. I mean, Edinburgh City, for example, looked in a pretty grim position, but there was some massive wins in the past few weeks, and they're beginning to kind of close that gap on the likes of Queen of the South, Stirling, and teams like that, and it could be fairly competitive between 3rd and 10th.
Yeah, you're very right in saying that. I think I was actually going to talk about Edinburgh City myself. That they started off really poorly, didn't look great for them at all. Like you mentioned, obviously they picked up Aidan McAdams, who was our reserve goalkeeper last season, and played a crucial part in keeping us up the season before. Unfortunately for him, fell out of favour to a really informed Charlie Albinson last year, who he was never going to, take the place of. Given Charlie's form last year, it was just out of this world. But Edinburgh City picked him up. I thought it was a good signing for Edinburgh City. I think he's a good goalkeeper at that sort of level. Championship League One, good goalie at that level. And yeah, a couple of wins in the past 5 games, a couple of draws as well. Seeing them close that gap to Queens, and mentioning Queens there as well. I saw something during the week. I think it was ex-Queens manager Willie Gibson was on a fans forum, having a go at one of the supporters, trying to say that he's had a better start, or he was on a better run of form at the time he was sacked than what Bartley's on just now. And was responding to comments that Bartley had made in the press. So yeah, it's definitely not pretty down there. And do you know what? It's a strange one because Queen of the South were such an established championship team, like Samuel mentioned. Like, I was used to going down there. That was you were down there twice a season. You were in Dumfries. It's a tough place to go. It would always be a good match between Aidan and Queen of the South. It was two sides that would look to play the ball, and play football the right way. It was always an exciting watch. So for me to see them down struggling in League One, potentially looking at relegation at this point, I doubt it will actually happen, but they are down there. That is a real possibility. To think that, just even like Samuel said 2 seasons ago, was pretty much unthinkable. So, definitely a lot of work to be done down there.
Yeah, I think that could be a situation that could be very bad indeed. League Two, I think, could be pretty open at the top. You've got Stenhousemuir in 28, Peterhead 28 points, Dumbarton 26. Spartans have had a decent start as well. They're on 20 points. They've obviously got a bit of ground to make up. We're recording this just as there's a couple of games going on, so the league position I've got might change in the next couple of minutes. So we'll keep an eye on that. But Samuel, at the top 3, Stenhousemuir, Peterhead, Dumbarton, they're all kind of much of a muchness at the moment. But Spartans, I've been impressed with the start they've had.
I've been impressed by Spartans as well. I thought their League Cup campaign was really good. They obviously beat Dundee United, really established themselves in their first season in the SPFL. For me, I think Stenhousemuir have impressed me quite a lot as well. Some beat St Johnstone earlier in the season, unfortunately, League Cup. But I know a few people at Steny. I know there's really good atmosphere around the club at the moment. They seem probably the most in form of the 3 teams. Obviously, they're all battling it out there, but I'm quite impressed with how they've started the season. I think Dumbarton as well, they'll be looking to get back up after quite a disappointing collapse last season, maybe a better second half of this season. You never know. As you say, we're only in November. The games are coming thick and fast, so it just depends who can weather the storm during this run and really kick on.
Daniel, it's a very open league as well. It's one of those, you've got Alexa, there's the league just changed as well. East Fife have they've just lost a goal, which means that they've went down 2 places in the space of 10 seconds. But again, it's another league that's just wide open.
It is. I think that's just the way the lower league of Scotland seems to be. I think probably similar financial constraints in all the clubs and only 10 teams in the league. It does fairly open it out. What I thought was interesting in that I had absolutely no idea that Stenhousemuir had never actually won a league title before. Obviously, they wouldn't have won this, like the Scottish Premiership title or anything by that means. But this season they looked like they're really making a good crack at it. Like I was looking there. I've got my notes. Matthew Aitken, he's been on really good form.
Yeah.
up top. They've looked like they've brought in some good players, but then some of the old guard like Gregor Buchanan just been rock solid and always such a threat. And I think they've got in Gary Naismith, who's obviously had a great playing career, tremendous experience playing the Premier League, he's won trophies, countless caps for Scotland. But what they might be most reassured by is that he actually won League Two as his Fife manager all of 7 years ago, maybe even 2016, I believe. Yeah. So I think for Steny, times we're looking up. But then you've got Peterhead as well, who last season, genuinely one of the worst teams I think anyone who was watching Scottish football has probably ever seen. Now, that's maybe as a little bit harsh, but, 16 points in 36 games. I think, I've had teams on Football Manager make better goals than that. They shipped 84 goals. They've actually scored more goals already this season than they did last season, which is just baffling to me. But, if you look at them, they came down after a hopeless season, but they changed managers before the end. They brought in Ryan Strachan and Jordan Brown as co-managers who really know the club inside out. And if you compare them to Clyde, who actually finished above them last year, it looks like they've really, they've been through such a bad situation, but it's really been a shot of life to them. And like you say, completely open league, anyone's to win, certainly one to watch.
Mitchell, you'll understand why I saved Clyde to yourself. As Clyde obviously are a bin fire at the moment, to be honest. There's a lot of problems there, but they've turned to a beloved figure in Scottish football, the one and only Ian McCall. I don't know about that one. I understand it. I know he wasn't first choice. I know for a fact he wasn't first choice. It can work, but he needs to pick up results ASAP, because looking at the position now and looking at what's happened with teams in that position in the past, it ends one way and it doesn't end well.
Yeah, we've also mentioned another surprising managerial appointment earlier on with Duncan Ferguson going to Inverness, and that raised plenty of eyebrows. But then even McCall to be appointed as Clyde manager, I don't think anyone, including myself, saw that one
coming in a million years.
Didn't see that coming at all, obviously. And it's well documented, and you'll know yourself, Scott, that their main target was Mick Kennedy, wasn't it? And
100%.
He was committed to East Kilbride, and I think him and Cy Ferry are building something really special there. I think it's credit to them that they've stuck by that.
I think that, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that speaks as well for the ambition of clubs in the Lowland League, that Mick clearly 100%. Was the target of Clyde, and he's looking at what he's building at East Kilbride and thinking, I'll be in a far better position than Clyde will be in the next couple of years. And you can understand why.
Oh, 100%. East Kilbride have got the resources there, and they've got the players. And obviously now they've got the manager, Mick Kennedy, they've got Cy Ferry, they've got the contacts and the resources there to bring in players who aren't just going to do them in the Lowland League. They'll be able to do them for seasons and seasons to come. I think we played them in pre-season, actually. Although it was a pre-season friendly, and it was one of Mick and Cy's kind of first couple of games in charge. And don't get me wrong, obviously friendly, it's a little bit of a dead atmosphere type thing, but I thought they were fantastic the way they tried to play. They stuck to their style. They didn't change it. Obviously, they ran out victors, but then again, they were brilliant. But in terms of McCall, going back to McCall, going to Clyde, I think, like you say, I think it's an eye-catching appointment. It's one that we're expecting a lot from. But then you look back in times previously in Scottish football when you've got high expectations of a manager, and it can just kind of all go wrong, can't it? I think they obviously experimented going with a younger manager, first-time manager at the start of the season. That clearly hasn't worked. I think they struggled past was it Musselburgh? They struggled past in the
just beat
Scottish
Musselburgh,
Cup. I remember watching that game live, and they didn't look good at all, Clyde. I think just kind of outran Musselburgh towards the end in terms of fitness and kind of know-how, if you like. But looking at the league table just now, next thing, obviously 5 points off of the nearest team, Elgin City and Forfar, both joint in 12, and then East Fife 13, Stranraer 14, I think. Obviously, what I've mentioned is very, very open league. But as for McCall, I think he's going to be judging results this time. He's not got the resources they would have had at Partick Thistle, even to an extent here where he could, attract the players. At the moment, Clyde, bottom of League Two, it's not the most attractive prospect to be in a League Two relegation dogfight. So I think he's going to be judged purely on results now. and it's going to be interesting, especially for myself as a United fan who absolutely loved McCall here. But just for any Scottish football fan to see how he gets on and see if he can develop this Clyde side, because like you said, I'm really not sure, to be quite honest with you.
I think it screams to me, and I know a lot of Partick Thistle, Dundee United fans who absolutely love Ian McCall, but it screams to me is that they're already in a position where they know their fate and they're hoping that a guy with a bit of experience can come in, and he could, to be honest. But I think anybody in that 10th place in League Two is panicking as soon as they're in it, because they know the fate, and it's very difficult to come back from it. We've seen it with the likes of Stirling, Berwick, Albion, were in it last season. It's such a hard position to get out of, and once you're in it, you need somebody. I can see it, and we've seen it in the past with like Sandy Clark getting in at Albion, it hasn't worked. So I think Ian McCall will obviously he'll need to hit the ground running straight away. They've got a massive game on Saturday against Friday against Jeanfield in the Cup. That's a big occasion for them. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a fascinating start to the SPFL season. We're going to finish with our Prem predictor. We've got 6 games this weekend. The real club football is back. I'm going to ask the guys to give me their opinions on the 6 games over the weekend, and we'll open it up to the fans watching the show. We'll have a wee bit of fun with this over the weekend. Start with the first game, Celtic versus Motherwell. We'll start with Daniel for this. Give us a score line for the clash between Celtic and Motherwell.
I'm going to disappoint every Motherwell fan in the world and go for a very standard 3-0 win from Hoops.
3-0 win for Celtic. Samuel, what you got for Celtic Motherwell?
To be honest, very much the same. I put 4-0 for Celtic. I just don't see them. I think Motherwell will concede an early goal, and that'll be it, to be honest.
Nice. Mitchell?
I'm going to go a little bit nicer on Motherwell. 4-1. I think they will get a goal. Celtic have shown a couple of defensive liabilities recently, so I think I go for Motherwell, but perhaps a consolation. I like consolation. I
can see this being quite a turbo game, because I think Celtic have a lot of injuries. I'm not sure Kyogo is going to be fit. I don't think Palmer's fit either. Maeda's injured as well. I think Celtic could have a few injury problems. I still think the one, I'm going to go for 2-0 to Celtic. But I think it could be an interesting game. Daniel, Dundee versus Hibs. Can Hibs get a win at Dens Park?
Hibs have not won at Dens Park since about 2019, to my knowledge, when Paul Heckingbottom was the manager. Dundee are a side we've not beaten this season. They're a side that's just won 4-0 at home. I think it's going to be a great game, but I'm going to go Dundee 2, Hibs 2.
2-2. Samuel?
So all I've written in my notes is stuttering Hibs. I've put 1-1. I just think they'll maybe take an early goal, get pegged back by Dundee, and that'll be it.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I promise you, me and Samuel haven't had any conversations here, but I've also put 1 each and just said I can't split them, just in terms of the form that Dundee are on and the inconsistency of Hibs. I don't know what to expect.
I'm going to go with a draw as well. I'm going to go 1 each as well. I think it could be a draw written all over it.
Let's hope there's 2 goals in that game.
Yeah,
really need it.
We could all be agreement in a draw. Samuel, will come to you for Hearts versus St Johnstone. What do you think?
Yeah, I had to think about this one, because it'll be interesting to see what Craig Levein lines up. Hearts is a big fixture for him. I've gone with 1-1 again, and I just think we'll score, but I also think Hearts will score. That's essentially what I've got down.
What was your score? Sorry,
1-1.
1-1. It's fine. I've went for 2-1 to Hearts. I think Lauren Shankland will have a bit of a bee in his bonnet after not being picked from the start on Sunday night. I think Hearts will win 2-1. It'll be a tight game. I can see St Johnstone. I can see Craig Levein putting in a typical Craig Levein away performance at his old club. 2-1 Hearts. Daniel, what do you think?
I think St Johnstone are going to be hard to beat. I'd love nothing more than Craig Levein to come back to haunt his former side. But Hearts have actually been on a decent run of form recently, so I think Craig may have to wait. I think it's got 1-0 Hearts, Shankland penalty written all over it.
1-0. Mitchell, can former Hearts, former Ayr player Lauren Shankland.
Yeah, former Ayr hero, Lauren Shankland there. Yeah, I think I'm going the exact same as you. I'm going to go 2-1, Shankland to score both. I think, just he'll get them through it. But like Samuel said, I think, and you've all said, to be fair, I think Levein's going to put up a good show. He'll be determined to show up well against Hearts, especially at Tynecastle.
Mitchell, I'll start with you for Ross County versus Kelly. The first game of the Derek Adams Part 3 era. Is he going to win at home against Kelly?
I don't see it, to be honest. I mean, new manager bounce could be there, but I don't see it. But then again, Kelly's away form isn't brilliant, so I've actually gone for a 1-each draw here as well.
I went one
A
each.
1-each draw.
Yeah, we're in agreement. 1 each. Samuel?
I promise I've not looked at his notes, but I've got 1 each as well.
1 each. Daniel, will be going over the board 1 each here?
No, I'm gonna just shake it up, be different. I'm gonna be a bit of a renegade here. I'm gonna bring a smile to Mitchell's face actually, because I'm gonna put Ross County to beat Killy 1-0 with the new manager bounce all over it. I'm a bit of a northerner myself, so I think some of my staggy friends might never forgive me if I put them down to lose this one.
Brilliant. St Mirren versus Livingston. There's always a 0-0 for me in every prediction I do, and this is my 0-0. I think St Mirren 0, Livingston 0. I can see that's been a bore fest. Samuel, St Mirren versus Livingston, what do you think?
I've put 2-0 St Mirren. I just think Livingston look dreadful at the moment. I mean, yeah, the last few times I've seen them just absolutely woeful in attack and defence.
Yeah, I can see that. Daniel, what you got for St Mirren versus Livingston?
I think St Mirren need to make a big statement after that last result. It did come out of the blue. It was a bit of a shocker, but I do think they will. I think Livy, they need it. They probably need it far more, but I'm just going to go 2-0 St Mirren. I can't see Livy getting anything out of this one.
2-0 St Mirren. Mitchell, what you got?
I've got 1-0 St Mirren. I think it's going to be a really tight one and a game with not much quality in it, but I think 1 goal for either team will probably edge it, and I'm going to go St Mirren on this occasion. 1-0 St Mirren.
We'll move into the Sunday game on Sky, Aberdeen versus Rangers. This is always a feisty contest. Samuel, what you got? Aberdeen versus Rangers?
I've gone for a hard-fought 2-1 win for Rangers. I just think Aberdeen have now had a couple of weeks off, so no European hangover, but I think Rangers will get it over the line, to be honest.
Daniel?
It actually is going to look like I'm copying Sam a bit here, but I think, there is that old adage in Scottish football that Aberdeen turn up for 4 games a season whenever it's against Rangers, which I think is a little...
Chris Boyd in the podcast.
I don't agree with that personally, because they also turn up against Hibs, so I think that's just totally untrue. They've not had a European game this week, so Aberdeen should be able to perform. There's no excuses of a European hangover, but I think Clement's Rangers are just on such a good vein of form. I've got to go 2-1 Rangers.
Mitchell, it's a dress rehearsal for the Viaplay Cup final in a month's time. What do we think?
I'm going to go, just to change the scoreline, I don't want to go 3 in a row. I'm going to go 3-2 to Rangers. I think they'll edge it. I think it'll be a goal fest, but I do think they'll pull through in the end.
I think Rangers will win. I think not enough has been said in recent weeks about just how much more solid Rangers have been at the back. And I can see Rangers winning 2-0 here. I think it'll be fairly comfortable. I don't think Aberdeen are that good, to be honest. I just, apart from Miovski right now, I just don't see. I don't think Duke's been at the races. I don't think they've been totally the Aberdeen of last year. I think I can see. I think Rangers have been fairly solid as of late. I've been quite impressed with them. I've not picked many goals over the course of the weekend. I know you guys have, so I'm hoping there's a goal fest for you guys. But we are going to wrap it up there. It's been a pleasure to get back doing the Scottish Football Show. It's been a pleasure to have my 3 guests on. First of all, to Mitchell Feggans, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure's always Scott.
Brilliant. And to we're two newbies.
Nothing better than chatting over Scottish football.
Definitely. And it's been a pleasure for 2 newbies. First of all, Samuel Porritt, thanks very much, mate.
Thanks. Pleasure to meet with Davey, as I said earlier. Delighted to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Thanks, mate. And to Daniel MacLeod, pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
Great to make my first appearance for the podcast. Hopefully, plenty more to come. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. Thanks very much. See you soon.